Baffin Bay, April 1912. The first thing they noticed was how quiet the world became north of the ice shelf. No birds, no wind, just the creak of timber and breath held too long. Captain Jonas Emerson stood at the bow of the steam cutter Resolute, peering into the white nothing ahead. 1,000 miles of sea ice stretched like glass, sanded smooth by forgotten gods. The Arctic had always felt indifferent to men, but today it felt aware. "Landfall within the hour, sir," said First Mate Coulter behind him, voice muffled by the scarf around his mouth. Emerson nodded. His gloves creaked as he tightened them. "Signal the sled teams. We unload at first light." Below deck, steam hissed, and the last of the crates, ammunition, food, the medical trunk, were being secured for the overland march. Somewhere in the hold, Dr. Lydia Renner adjusted the lens of a field camera. German by birth, educated in London, she joined the expedition under the Royal Society's urging, not for glory, for what they called the anomaly. 2 years ago, the Strauss expedition had vanished. No distress signals, no messages, just nothing. Until 6 months ago, when an Inuit trapper found a brass medallion near Ellesmere's northern cliffs, carved with a spiral unlike any seen before. Emerson's expedition log, April 14, 1912, latitude 79.8 degrees, temperature -38 Celsius. We made landfall at a pressure ridge due west of the Strauss marker. No tracks, no ash, no graves, just smooth, untouched ice, as if nothing had ever stepped here. Dr. Renner has taken the medallion to photograph against the cliff face. She insists the etchings are not random. Coulter suspects local markings, but I disagree. They feel too intentional. There's a weight to them. By the second day on land, the white silence became heavier. Private Dorn claimed he heard breathing outside his tent at night. No footprints, no wind, but breathing. The crew dismissed it. Fatigue, cold, the mind plays tricks out here. Until Sergeant Burke wandered too far during morning latrine and returned without his eyes. He was alive, coherent, but something was wrong. It was staring at me, he kept repeating. It wasn't angry, just patient. Dr. Renner examined the lids. No frostbite, no trauma. Just gone. Emerson made the decision. Establish a base camp. Dig in. Document everything. If Strauss had faced the same thing, they had to understand what and why. That night, Coulter stood watch while Emerson reviewed Renner's photographs. One image caught his attention. A stone ridge with angular cuts in the ice behind it. But when he leaned in closer, he saw something else. A figure, barely visible, standing behind the pattern. No coat, no face, just a shadow in the white. Renner hadn't seen it. Emerson didn't sweep. Expedition log, April 16th, 1912. Something watches from the ice. We move tomorrow to the Strauss coordinates. The anomaly is real. I believe now that we were not the first to find it, but perhaps we will be the last. April 17th, 1912. Ellesmere Island, Canadian Arctic Archipelago. The wind shifted. Captain Jonas Emerson felt it before he heard it. That strange low hum woven into the wind's current. It came from the north, always the north, and with it, the temperature dropped another 5 degrees. They reached the old Strauss coordinates by noon. Dr. Renner insisted on mapping each geological detail before tents were set. The light here did strange things, refracted wrong, like a lens warped just enough to make straight lines bend. The Strauss camp had not weathered time. 4 canvas shelters flattened to ice, rusted poles, a supply crate shattered, its contents scattered and strangely burned at the edges, though no scorch marks touched the snow. Private Thorne found the first body. It sat upright against the ice ridge, hands in lap, boots removed, face lifted to the sky, frozen into a calm expression. Not fear, acceptance. Renner documented it without a word. But Ray Coulter, the first mate, crossed himself. They didn't die running. They died waiting. Inside the largest collapsed shelter, Emerson uncovered a journal, half frozen, waterlogged, most pages unreadable. But one entry remained. It told us to stop. We didn't. Then it showed us what comes next. The final line had been scratched so deeply it tore through the page. Do not read the ice. By evening, a perimeter was set. Burials impossible. The crew laid the remains in a shallow crevasse and marked it with the Union Jack and a black cloth. Renner analyzed the cuts in the ridge behind the camp. At first glance, they seemed glacial. Pressure fractures, melt lines. but she looked closer through her field scope. They were carved. This wasn't erosion, she told Emerson. These were etched, and not recently. Ancient. She paused. And I've seen one of these symbols before, in Munich, on a bone fragment from a Neolithic burial. It was considered non-translatable. That night, while Emerson reviewed their findings, Coulter burst into his tent. You need to see this. Outside, a strange light shimmered across the snow. Green and blue, not aurora. Closer. Wrong. The ice ridge glowed faintly. And where Renner had traced symbols earlier, new lines appeared, uncarved, drawn in frost, like the ice was writing back. Thorne muttered a prayer behind them. His breath fogged unnaturally fast. Renner whispered, "The code isn't buried. It's alive." Expedition log, April 17th, 1912, night. We've established that the Strauss expedition encountered something more than natural hardship. The cause of death is unknown. The phenomenon is accelerating. The ice is shifting as if something beneath it moves or remembers. I no longer trust silence here. It feels rehearsed. April 18th, 1912, Strauss Ridge Camp. Snow drifted in slow spirals as dawn broke, blue light bending oddly across the ridge. The symbols, carved into the ice, had not faded overnight. If anything, they had deepened. Sharper, darker, as though something inside the ice had finished tracing them while the world slept. Captain Emerson and Dr. Renner stood side by side, silent. They weren't made by tools, Renner said. There are no chisel marks, no spall fractures. These were grown. She touched the ice with a gloved hand. It pulsed faintly beneath her fingers. Private Thorne approached from the perimeter, face pale. Sir, there's another site, south of the ridge, cavern mouth, half buried. Emerson grabbed his coat. The entrance was barely more than a crack in the glacier wall, but inside, it widened into a frozen tunnel, smooth and curved, unnaturally so, as if something had hollowed it out deliberately. Frost patterns climbed the walls in organized spirals, repeating with fractal precision. The light from their lanterns bent against it. 10 meters in, they found it. A slab of black ice, veined with deep crimson. And beneath it, more symbols, but these weren't etched. They were suspended inside the ice like insects trapped in amber. Thousands of characters. Some move when you weren't looking. Renner stared in awe. It's a language, but it's not meant to be spoken. Coulter whispered, then what's it for? Containment. Back at camp, Anderson read the Strauss journal again. And do not read the ice. He understood now. The Strauss team hadn't failed to return. They'd been silenced by the very knowledge they unearthed. That evening, Sergeant Burke collapsed in his tent. When they found him, he was muttering phrases no one recognized. Dr. Renner recorded it phonetically. It matched the glyphs in the ice. Burke died before midnight. No wounds, no signs of illness, just stopped. In his pocket, they found a small shard of black crystal. Where it touched the table, the wood beneath began to darken. Thorne refused to sleep. Coulter doubled the watch. Renner wept quietly over her notes. Emerson lit a lamp, then extinguished it again. He didn't want shadows. Expedition log, April 18th, 1912. The ice is not inert. It carries memory, intent, perhaps even choice. We've breached something ancient, not dead, but dreaming. I must decide whether we press forward or seal this place behind us. Title, The Arctic Code, Part 4, Cold Visions. April 19th, 1912, Strauss Ridge Camp. The cold wasn't just cold anymore. It had taken on a rhythm, a pulse, a breath. Captain Emerson awoke with frost clinging to his eyelashes and the sound of whispering in his ears. No one else heard it. At least no one said they did. Dr. Renner was already outside, examining the black crystal found in Burke's coat. It had been sealed in a metal container overnight, yet the interior walls were frosting over with strange patterns, tiny repeating spirals. It's replicating, she said quietly, as if it remembers the glyphs. Or is rewriting them, Emerson replied. That morning, the dogs refused to eat. All right, the sleds were packed for a recon trip east, but one of the huskies began barking wildly at the untouched snow. All right? When Emerson approached, he found strange indentations nearby. Not footprints, all right? Circles, nested, repeating. Thorne stood pale, fingers twitching. It stood there, he said. All right? Last night, I saw it, no face, just light. Coulter scoffed. Dreams, you haven't slept. It wasn't a dream. Thorne's eyes were bloodshot. It looked like Captain Emerson. By midday, they reached a bluff overlooking a frozen inlet. What should have been smooth ice was fractured into perfect geometric shapes, like a puzzle, half carved by the elements, half guided by some buried intent. Rena knelt at the edge, sketching furiously. It's the same structure from Neolithic ritual sites in Sardinia, down to the sequence of angles. How is that possible here? You think this was built? She paused. No, I think it was grown. That night, Emerson dreamt. He stood inside a sphere of ice. Symbols glowed in every direction. His breath echoed like a storm. In the center stood a tall figure. Not man, not beast. Its skin was ice, its eyes black spirals. It reached toward him, then into him. He woke choking, blood on his lips. Renner ran in. You were convulsing. He gripped her wrist. It's not just a warning. It's a door. To what? He didn't answer. But outside, Thorne had already started carving the symbols into the snow. He didn't remember doing it. Expedition log, April 19th, 1912. Night. The visions are growing stronger. They do not feel like hallucinations. They feel like transmission. The code is not passive. It is recursive. Viral. I see now why the Strauss men died in silence. Not from fear, but obedience. April 20th, 1912. Strauss Ridge Camp. At first light, they found Thorne standing at the edge of the bluff with no coat. His arms were covered in spirals. Not tattoos, not ink. Frostbite. Patterns etched into his skin in perfect symmetry. He didn't scream. He didn't speak. He simply looked at Captain Emerson and said, "It opened." Dr. Renner sedated him, though his eyes never fully closed. Coulter demanded they return to the Resolute. This is madness. We're not explorers anymore, we're bait. Emerson ignored him. He had seen the same spirals in his dreams, and last night, he'd seen him on a map. Inside Emerson's tent, a crude map had formed overnight on the canvas wall, in blood. Thin streaks dried into lines, not random, cartographic. A sequence of ridges and tunnels matching nothing they'd charted. The code is embedding itself, Renner whispered, into us, into the environment. It's parasitic. She held up Burke's black crystal shard. It was now pulsing, like a heartbeat. Despite Coulter's protest, the crew followed the map. They moved southeast across a glacial shelf. Snowshoes crunching over frost-laced ice. Hours passed. Then a ridge, just like the one drawn on Emerson's wall. And its base, a narrow fissure, half covered by snow. They entered. The tunnel sloped down into a hollow chamber. Its walls were smooth, polished as if carved by design. In the center, a plinth of black ice. Above it, the ceiling opened to the sky, casting down a pillar of white light. On the plinth, a sheet of metal, old, worn, covered in spiral glyphs. But at the center, a new symbol appeared. Not carved, formed by cracks. Rena stepped closer. Her nose bled. "This isn't just language," she whispered. "It's an operating system. It's rewriting reality around it." "To what end?" Emerson asked. She looked up. Her pupils were spirals. "To remember itself." As they left the chamber, Coulter drew his revolver. "This ends now. We're destroying the map, the crystals, all of it." "You saw the truth," Emerson said calmly. "Yes," Coulter replied, "and I'll die before I let it inside me." That night, the black crystal disappeared from the supply tent. Renner denied moving it. Coulter refused to speak. And in the snow outside Emerson's tent, a new set of spiral footprints appeared, leading away from the camp, into the dark. Expedition log, April 20th, 1912, night. The code is not just a cipher. It is a will. We have uncovered something not buried, but sealed. I fear it is no longer content to be remembered. It wishes to be known. April 21st, 1912. Strauss Ridge Camp. The moon rose, swollen and pale, a sickle of bone through the haze. Anderson had read once that the Inuit called it the hunger moon. It marked the turning point between survival and starvation. And now, it hovered over a camp unspooling into madness. Thorne was gone, vanished before dawn, leaving behind a trail of spirals carved with frost-bitten fingers into the snow. No blood, no gear, just the silence of his absence. Coulter was unraveling. He stood guard with his rifle even while they slept, twitching at shadows, snapping at wind. "He's not dead," he said to no one in particular. "He's whispering, from under the ice. I hear him at night." Rena took no meals. She scribbled endlessly in her notebook, pages filled with equations, glyphs, and most disturbingly, drawings of an inhuman shape outlined in spirals. "It doesn't want worship," she said. "It wants resonance, to echo in us." Food dwindled. Salt meat froze to the bone. The dogs refused to move. One was found gutted from the inside. Emerson kept the fire burning through the night. He barely blinked. He dreamt again. This time, he saw the map from his tent wall expand, not across land, but across flesh. A body etched with symbols. A voice in the dark. Language is hunger. He woke with blood on his hands. Not his own, Coulter's. The first mate had sliced his palm open and pressed it against the plinth. Now he sat mumbling beside the supply crates. "It fed on it," he whispered, "and it remembered more." Renner approached Emerson before dawn. Her face gaunt, her eyes rimmed in red. "Captain, if we stay through another moonrise, it will no longer need us to speak it. It will wear us. Then we leave." "We can't." She opened her coat. The spirals were now forming across her abdomen. Expedition log, April 21st, 1912. Late. "We are infected not with disease, but syntax. It grows like language through contact, repetition, belief. Even those resisting it are being shaped. We did not find a code. The code found us. Tomorrow, we burn the plinth. If it stops us, then we'll know what we were meant for." April 22nd, 1912. The plinth site. They moved before sunrise. Renner gathered the notes. Coulter carried the fuel canisters. Emerson held a flare, ready to burn what they had found, what had been waiting beneath the ice for gods knew how long. Snow fell sideways, wind carving thin blades across the glacier. The plinth stood where they left it, black and silent, symbols faintly pulsing just beneath its surface like veins under translucent skin. "We destroy it," Emerson said. No one objected. He lit the flare, but the moment the flame neared the plinth, the ice cracked, not beneath the stone, but under their feet. A sound rose from below, not a roar, a breath. Then the world collapsed. They fell through 50 feet of ice. Emerson hit hard, snow driving into his ribs. For a moment, everything was white and soundless. Then came pain. Then came light. Pale blue light rising from the cavern floor. They were inside a hollow dome, a cathedral carved in glacier. The ceiling arched overhead, lined with spiral inscriptions larger than a man. At the center, a pit, and from it, heat. Coulter coughed blood. His leg was broken. Renner dragged him aside, her arms shaken. Emerson crawled to the edge of the pit. Inside, a column of ice rose, clear, humming, and filled with forms. Human silhouettes. Dozens, frozen in mid-scream. He stumbled back. Renner knelt beside him, whispering. It didn't want the Strauss team. It used them. Same with us. We were just the key. A low vibration filled the chamber. Then the ice spoke, not with words, but memory. Visions burst across Emerson's mind. Prehistoric people carving spirals into cave walls. A voiceless entity teaching language through pattern. A failed prison beneath the ice, buried and forgotten. Until now. Until them. Coulter screamed. His skin split along the spiral scars. Light poured from his eyes. Renner dragged Emerson back toward the tunnel they had fallen through. The ice was reshaping behind them, closing like a mouth. "It's waking up," she cried, "and it's learning to be us." They reached a crevice and climbed. Behind them, Coulter's voice echoed, layered inhuman. Syntax complete, vessel acquired. They surfaced just before dusk. The wind had died. The world was still, but not empty. Below them, in the cave of ice, something old and thinking stirred, and it had begun to speak. Expedition log, April 22nd, 1912. Final entry, Emerson. "We thought the Arctic was dead, but it was dreaming, and we were the story it needed to remember its own name. We run now, but the language runs with us." April 23rd, 1912. En route south from the plinth. They left Coulter behind. They had no choice. By the time Emerson and Renner reached the old Strauss Trail, their supplies were half gone, and the sun never rose. Only a red haze hung low on the horizon. Not day, not night, just a bleeding pause. Renner had stopped speaking. She wrote instead. Spiral after spiral, line after line, fingers twitching from cold and compulsion. "The code won't stop," she scribbled. "It's inside us now, a parasite of syntax. Emerson burned her notebook while she slept. That night, they found the chamber. Not in a cave, not underground. Inside the ice itself, an opening had formed on the ridge wall, clean, circular, almost artificial. They stepped through. What waited was not stone or snow, but a vast hollow of clear crystal, the cipher chamber. Inside, language formed geometry. Angles became sounds. Symbols glowed faintly beneath every surface, as though they weren't etched, but grown. At the center, a seat or a throne, empty. Renner whispered, "This wasn't a prison, it was a throne room. And the code is its crown." A voice echoed without origin, "We are made in repetition." The walls pulsed. Emerson stepped forward, memories flashing, his childhood rewritten in spirals, his first expedition, symbols where faces once were, his own voice saying words he never learned. Renner fell to her knees. "I understand it now," she wept. "It's not invading us, it's replacing us." Her eyes rolled back, her voice changed. Syntax complete, upload in progress. Emerson dragged her away from the throne. The chamber darkened, but as they fled, a figure formed in the crystal, tall, indistinct, glowing with the same spiral geometry. It did not follow, it only watched. Outside, the wind had picked up. Renner collapsed beside the sled. "Jonas," she said weakly, "we can't go back. If we return to civilization, we carry it with us." Emerson looked to the south. "Then we bury it here, us or it." He checked the remaining dynamite. 3 sticks, enough. Expedition log, April 23rd, 1912. The cipher chamber is real. The entity behind the code is aware. It has no need for conquest. It only needs recognition. It uses language like a root system. Once spoken, it grows. Once believed, it thrives. We will not carry it further. We end it now. April 24th, 1912, the descent. They waited till first light, though the sun never came. The air outside the cipher chamber had changed. It no longer carried cold. It carried stillness, the type that settles over a battlefield before the killing begins. Captain Emerson and Dr. Renner descended back into the ice with the last of the dynamite. Neither spoke. There were no goodbyes, only understanding. Inside, the chamber was no longer empty. The figure in the crystal had moved. It now stood beside the throne. No face, no features, just a shape, a vessel, brimming with spirals, pulsing like language made flesh. Emerson approached the base, planting the explosives. "Do you think this'll stop it?" Renner asked. "No," he said, "but maybe it'll make the world think twice before coming back." She placed her hand on the wall. The symbols beneath her palm shifted, responded. "We remember you," the chamber whispered. She looked to Emerson. "It's using memory to map thought. Every word we've spoken, every dream. It's not a weapon, it's a seed. Then we salt the earth." As Emerson lit the fuse, the figure moved, not walked, unfolded. Its shape bent in impossible angles, folding space as if paper crumpled around it. The glyphs on the walls erupted in violent light. Renner screamed, but not in fear, in recognition. It was waiting to be known. It was never asleep, just unread. The chamber began to collapse. Emerson grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit tunnel. Behind them, the throne melted. The glyphs burst. A final pulse of light, and the world shook. Ice cracked. Snow surged. Then, silence total. They crawled from the cave mouth as the ridge fell inward. The cipher chamber crushed beneath tons of glacier. Renner fell to her knees, sobbing. Emerson collapsed beside her. No sign of the figure. No voice, just snow. And the faint shape of a spiral, wind blown into the drifts. Expedition log, April 24th, 1912. We sealed it. Maybe not forever, but for now. The ice remembers, and we are part of it now. Names carved into the cold. The thing that waited still waits. But we are not listening anymore. April 25th, 1912. Drift ice, Eastern Channel. They walked south for 2 days. No sun, no wind, only white. Dr. Renner stopped speaking altogether. She stared ahead, eyes bloodshot, clutching the last scrap of her notebook, a torn page, covered front and back with glyphs drawn in a honed hand. Captain Emerson led them onward, compass frozen, maps useless. But something in him pointed still. Not north, not home, just away. On the third day, they saw smoke. A whaler, anchored at the edge of the ice. Men in fur coats, rifles, red beards, and cold eyes. They brought Emerson and Renner aboard, fed them, wrapped them in blankets. The captain of the ship, a Dane named Holm, asked no questions. He simply said, "You came from the north, that's enough." Emerson didn't argue. Renner was quarantined below deck. Her skin had turned gray. She mumbled spirals in her sleep. One night, she stopped breathing. And then, she started again. But her breath spiraled across the frost-covered porthole. Holm ordered her confined. Emerson kept the notebook, burned the pages, except one. May 1st, 1912, Reykjavik, Iceland. Emerson disembarked alone. He walked into the nearest telegraph station and sent a coded report to the Royal Society. Site unsafe. Language persistent. Phenomenon unknown. Do not pursue. He left the building, kept walking. He never returned to England. Years passed, then decades. The world moved on. World wars came and went. Empires rose and fell. Radio was born. Then satellites. Then data. Then pattern. And somewhere, in a remote server farm, a technician noticed something. A self-replicating code fragment. Geometric, recursive, spiral. It didn't break systems. It rewrote them. And its name field simply read, Emerson. Final entry. Unknown source. The code is not dead. It sleeps in structure. It thrives in memory. It waits to be read.